probability and discrete probabilities.
Isa Kamara, American Hansen.
So the aim of our project is to tabulate the odds of holding any one of the winning combinations in poker. In general, what we want to do, since these are discrete odds, it's the events for winning for a particular hand versus the events against. Believe it or not, although there are a ton of possibilities while you're playing poker, there are a finite number of events that can occur. Although that event space is massive, 52 factorial, which is too big to even write fit on this. So our aim is to calculate all the event space in this using combinatorics pretty smartly, and in some cases we have to resort to set operations. So since odds are discrete, we can borrow a lot of the tricks from combinatorics and permutations. A lot of what we learned in foundations of computer science and discrete math, and just use those concepts in a way that can make a useful product. So the first thing we had to do was calculate the base odds and just make an engine essentially for allowing us to manipulate these odds really intuitively, because when you look at it at first, it's just a lot of numbers, choose operations, permutation operations, and it's like when you're calculating an odd or a statistic, it's not really clear by the numbers exactly what that statistic means. So we had to make the program that was able to, and a library interface that's able to allow us to do those operations really smartly. So for example, this is for 3 of a kind, figuring out based on the initial 5-card draw what the likelihood and how big the event spaces are. So there are 13 ranks to choose from ace all the way up to king. For 3 of a kind and 4 ways to arrange 3 cards among the 4 cards to choose. So there are 12 choose to 66 ways to arrange the other 2 ranks, which you don't have to necessarily count. And then in each of the 2 ranks, there are 4 cards to choose from. Thus, you get this equation built, and it's manipulating things like this in order to get the total event space, and then figuring out based on other event spaces what their relative probability is. Yeah, so stepping through what we had to do, we found once we had the base odds, since that was based on combinatorics, you didn't really have a way to manipulate each of the individual elements. It was just talking about the size of the actual sets that we've created, not necessarily what each of those sets contain. So when we did the rest of the implementation, we had to kind of have this higher level thing in combinatorics and then subtract away that total set size based on what we calculated. And now we're making the engine in order to do all those permutations to figure out each of the things and exclude our calculated set space from whatever the event space that we calculated for each of the different winning hands.
One of the big difficulties with the implementation we've had is because there are so many possibilities and so many different ways to win, is we're trying to find a nice medium of how much of the percentages and how much of the winning hand should be hard-coded in, and how many possible sets that will lead to a winning.
Yeah.
So one of the beginning side thoughts we had was also to add in blackjack card counting feature that'll just it'll be very simple when you're first using it. It'll just be entering all the cards, it'll do the counting for you. But we also hope to include, we will include the instructions on how the card counting works and each variation of it as shown. So after a couple rounds or a couple games, you'll pick up you know how to count cards in your head without using that feature we have. And when it comes to actually implementing it and producing it on ideally a smartphone, we'll have a standard version that will look like a card casino app, and then we also want to have one that looks like a texting app, just for the sake of being able to hide the fact that you're getting all these statistics when you're playing in front of friends. So we'll have a .txt file in the project that you'll be able to create the code words that will translate to ace three aces, well, three of hearts or like ace of spades kind of thing. So you can create some pretty sneaky codes to like get around your friends knowing what you're doing when you're just playing at a table with them. Yeah, so special thanks to Goldsmith, Professor Morthy, and all our RCOS for all the input you've given so far. Any questions?
When we talk about the implementation, what language do you use? What are the different implementations?
So we initially started off in C#, because there was a neat language, we hadn't had much experience in it, but we found that it didn't give us the base level implementation features that we kind of wanted from it, since we're doing these like massive set operations and everything. So we eventually just decided to choose C++ since it was easier to manipulate the data that way. And it's just an open source C++ library that we've built so far. Yes?
Have you considered making like a wearable version? Yeah, so that way we like change the stats with glass around like that.
That's really cool. Maybe we can sneak this into like a Google Glass type thing. Do it on the fly.
Smartwatches.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Just check the time and yes.
So, I guess is the goal particularly an AI that plays poker offline or something?
No. So we're not implementing any AI features. It's just a statistical engine, a lot of number crunching in the background.
It would be more of an advisor as to when to bet. Thoughts on trying to suggest how much to bet would be pretty tricky, especially with bluffing. So we haven't really touched on that yet, but it's definitely something we're thinking about.
You have seen the movie 21?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is that last problem, is that something that actually has a solution?
I'm sorry?
What?
Like choosing the amount
How much
that you can consider bluffing, is that solvable or is that?
It wouldn't be, I don't think it would be
Something
actually
that would
solvable. It
involve,
would
like-
have to, come from our feelings on like what should be bet. It would always be a recommendation.
That's like an AI development.
Yeah, because choosing what to bluff would be impossibly hard. And then if you didn't give the option to bluff whenever it's betting high, it's